Dawn broke cold and grey on 16 December 1944 in Lanzerath, Belgium. 22 Americans crouched in foxholes along a snowy ridge breadth visible in the freezing air. The Intelligence and Reconnaissance Platoon, 394th Infantry Regiment, 99th Infantry Division, held this quiet sector, led by 20-year-old Lieutenant Lyle J. Bulge Jr. Their strength included 4 forward observers from Battery C 300, 71st Field Artillery. Their mission watch routes toward Losheimer Graben, a critical path to the Elsenborn ridgeline hinge of the northern shoulder. Across the open ground, a German battalion, roughly 500 paratroopers from the 1st Battalion 9th Fallschirmjäger Regiment, advanced to clear Rollbahn D for the 6th Panzer Army's thrust. The Ardennes offensive had begun. The Americans' key metric, their M1 rifles and machine guns, covered a firing range of 800 yards across open fields. Snow crunched under German boots as the first wave emerged from the tree line. Bulge's men, concealed in dug-in positions, held fire until the enemy closed within 300 yards. The initial volley staggered the paratroopers, who scattered for cover. The Americans' foxholes spaced along the ridge allowed interlocking fields of fire. Each man carried limited ammunition, about 160 rounds per rifleman at the start. Forward observers strained to contact artillery support, but radio signals faltered in the dense forest and snow. The Germans regrouped, probing for weak points, their numbers swelling as more companies joined the assault. Bulge shifted men to reinforce gaps, directing fire to pin the enemy in the open. By mid-morning, the platoon had repelled 2 attacks, but the cost was clear. Ammunition dwindled, and the wounded began to accumulate in the shallow foxholes. The Germans pressed harder, their officers urging men forward despite mounting losses. The paratroopers' light machine guns sprayed the ridge, forcing Americans to keep low. Bulge's orders were precise fire, only on clear targets conserve rounds. The forward observers managed brief contact with the 371st Field Artillery, calling in shells that landed 800 yards distant, disrupting German formations. Casualties among the attackers climbed steadily later. Estimates suggest dozens fell in the first hours. The Americans' position, though, grew precarious. Radios failed consistently by noon. No relief was coming. The platoon's stand relied on discipline and terrain. Their foxholes dug into frozen earth offered protection but no retreat. The number that matters is 160 rounds per man at dawn's start. The sun climbed higher, but clouds and snow kept Lanzerath's ridge shrouded in gloom. By midday, the Intelligence and Reconnaissance Platoon faced relentless German assaults. The 500 paratroopers of the 1st Battalion, 9th Fallschirmjäger Regiment, pressed forward their waves, now coordinated with mortar fire. Shells exploded along the ridge, throwing dirt and snow over the 22 Americans. Bulge's men entrenched in foxholes maintained disciplined fire, targeting paratroopers who broke cover at 300 yards. The Americans' M1 rifles and single Browning machine gun spat steadily, each burst calculated to maximize effect. Ammunition, initially 160 rounds per rifleman, had dwindled to under 50 for most by noon. The forward observers, struggling with fading radios, called in sporadic artillery landing shells 800 yards out when signals held. The Germans adapted, using the village of Lanzerath below as cover to stage attacks. Small groups crept closer, exploiting dips in the terrain. Bulge repositioned 2 men to cover a flanking approach, narrowing gaps in the defensive line. The platoon's fire discipline held, but the strain was evident. 3 men were wounded by shrapnel, their positions now manned by others. The observers reported German casualties piling up later, tallied at roughly 40 killed or wounded by midday. The Americans' foxholes, spaced to cover 800 yards of open ground, gave them an edge, but the enemy's numbers tested their resolve. Bulge scanned the ridge, calculating how long they could hold without resupply. The constraint was 50 rounds per man by noon's peak. German commanders grew frustrated. Their timetable for Rollbahn D was slipping. From their perspective, the ridge should have fallen hours earlier. A small American unit was not supposed to stall a battalion. "American fire pins us at 200 meters, a Fallschirmjäger officer noted, cursing the concealed foxholes. The paratroopers tried heavier barrages, but the Americans' low profiles minimized losses. Bulge's men, though exhausted, shifted positions to confuse the enemy. firing only when targets were clear. The ridge's elevation gave them a slight advantage, forcing Germans to advance uphill. As afternoon wore on, the platoon's wounded increased to 5, and radio contact with the 371st Field Artillery faded entirely. The stand held, but the cost mounted with every passing hour. The afternoon sky over Lanzerath grew heavier snow, falling thicker as the temperature dropped. The Intelligence and Reconnaissance Platoon, now reduced by 5 wounded, clung to their foxholes along the ridge. The German 1st Battalion 9th Fallschirmjäger Regiment, numbering roughly 500 at dawn, pressed their assault with renewed intensity. Their mortars pounded the American positions, each blast sending frozen earth cascading over the 22 defenders. Bulge's men, down to roughly 30 rounds per rifleman, fired sparingly, waiting for paratroopers to close within 200 yards. The single Browning machine gun, manned in shifts, stuttered in short bursts to conserve its dwindling belts. The forward observers, their radios now silent, could no longer call in artillery from the 371st Field Artillery. The Americans' firing range, still 800 yards across open fields, remained their strongest asset. The Germans shifted tactics, sending smaller squads to probe the flanks, while main assaults hit the center. Bulge countered by repositioning 3 men to cover a wooded draw on the left where paratroopers had crept within 100 yards. The platoon's interlocking fire, disciplined and precise, disrupted these probes, forcing the enemy back into the open. German casualties mounted later. Estimates suggest 60 killed or wounded by late afternoon. The Americans' foxholes, dug into the ridge's frozen crest, offered protection but no warmth. Men shivered as they aimed. Bulge crawled between positions, checking ammunition and directing fire, his voice steady despite the chaos. The wounded, now 7, were bandaged in the foxholes, unable to be evacuated. The number that matters is 30 rounds per man at 3 o'clock. From the German perspective, the delay was maddening. The ridge holds. Their fire is too accurate, a Fallschirmjäger lieutenant reported, frustrated by the stalled advance. The paratroopers expected a quick breakthrough to open Rollbahn D for Kampfgruppe Peiper's armored column, but the small American unit defied their plans. The Germans tried heavier machine gun fire, raking the ridge to suppress the defenders, but the foxholes' low profiles minimized hits. Bulge's men, though outnumbered, used the terrain's elevation to their advantage, forcing the enemy to climb exposed slopes. One American manning the Browning was struck by shrapnel, reducing the crew to a single operator. The platoon's cohesion held, but ammunition was critically low. Some men were down to 10 rounds. Bulge ordered bayonets fixed, preparing for a last stand if the Germans closed the distance. As the light began to fade, the Germans launched a larger assault, committing 2 companies in a coordinated push. The paratroopers advanced under cover of smoke, closing to 150 yards before American fire broke their momentum. The Browning gunner, switching to single shots, targeted officers to disrupt command. Bulge's men, now rationing every bullet, aimed for maximum effect, dropping dozens of attackers. The Germans fell back, regrouping in Lanzerath's buildings below. The platoon's stand had delayed the 6th Panzer Army's timetable by hours, but the cost was stark. 9 wounded, no radio, and no reinforcements. The ridge remained a choke point, its 800-yard field of fire still holding the enemy at bay. Bulge scanned the darkening horizon, knowing nightfall would bring new challenges. Twilight cloaked Lanzerath's ridge in snow, and shadowed the air, biting with cold. The Intelligence and Reconnaissance Platoon, 394th Infantry Regiment, 99th Infantry Division, now counted 12 men able to fight their foxholes, battered by relentless combat. The German 1st Battalion 9th Fallschirmjäger Regiment, over 400 strong, despite losses massed in the village below, their figures fading into the dusk. The Americans' ammunition was nearly gone. Riflemen held 8 rounds each, and the Browning machine gun clung to its last belt of 200 rounds. Lieutenant Lyle J. Bulge Jr., his face etched with frost and dirt, crawled between positions, redistributing cartridges to sustain fire. The platoon's firing range, 800 yards across open fields, was their final bulwark against the German tide. The 4 forward observers, their radios silent since noon, fought as riflemen, their artillery support lost to the snow-choked air. The Germans launched a massive assault at dusk, 3 companies advancing in coordinated waves. Mortar rounds pounded the ridge, throwing frozen earth and shrapnel over the foxholes. Buch's men braced against the barrage, waited until the paratroopers closed to 100 yards, then fired with desperate precision. The Browning gunner, hands numb from cold, unleashed short bursts, cutting down the lead ranks. Buch shifted 2 men to the right flank, where a German squad crept within 60 yards, using a wooded draw for cover. The platoon's fire, though sparse, remained lethal. Later estimates tallied 80 German casualties by evening, killed or wounded in the open fields. The Americans' foxholes, shallow and frozen, offered little protection as the enemy drew closer, their shouts piercing the snowy dusk. The number that matters is 8 rounds per man at dusk's onset. From the German perspective, the delay was catastrophic. Their fire holds us at 100 meters. A Fallschirmjäger officer cursed his battalion stalled. The paratroopers, tasked with clearing Rollbahn D for Kampfgruppe Peiper's tanks, saw their timetable unraveling under the platoon's resistance. The 6th Panzer Army's northern thrust relied on speed, but the ridge's defenders defied expectations. The Germans shifted to flanking maneuvers, sending squads through the wooded slopes to envelop the position. Buch spotted the movement and redirected fire, but with 8 rounds per man, coverage was thin. A German squad reached the ridge's base, forcing hand-to-hand combat in one foxhole, where an American repelled 2 paratroopers with a bayonet. The platoon held, but 3 more men were wounded, leaving 9 still fighting. The stand had delayed the Germans for nearly 12 hours, but the enemy's numbers were overwhelming. The Germans committed their reserves, targeting the platoon's weakened left flank. Mortar barrages intensified, 1 shell collapsing a foxhole's edge, wounding another American. Buch's men, out of rifle ammunition, resorted to bayonets and entrenching tools. The Browning gunner, switching to single shots, targeted German officers to disrupt command. The paratroopers, sensing collapse, surged forward, closing to 50 yards under cover of darkness. Buch ordered his men to hold, but the machine gun fell silent, its rounds exhausted. By midnight, the Germans overran the ridge, their boots crunching over frozen earth as they captured the survivors. Buch and his men, 9 wounded and 12 taken prisoner, were marched into the night. Only 1 American had been killed. The Germans secured Rollbahn D, but the delay cost Peiper hours, forcing his tanks onto congested routes. The platoon's defiance reshaped the battle's opening. The 800-yard firing range, leveraged with disciplined fire, turned a reconnaissance mission into a choke point. Buch's leadership, rationing ammunition, repositioning men, maximized their impact. The forward observers, cut off from artillery, fought as infantry, adding their rifles to the defense. The Germans, expecting to sweep aside an inexperienced unit, lost 80 men and critical momentum. The Elsenborn ridgeline gained time for Allied reinforcements, strengthening the northern shoulder. The platoon's foxholes, now empty, marked a stand that held until the last moment. The night swallowed Lanzerath, but the platoon's resistance echoed, altering the German offensive's trajectory. The tactical choices were rooted in necessity and terrain. The ridge's elevation forced the Germans uphill, exposing them to fire across 800 yards. Buch's orders to fire only on clear targets preserved ammunition, but by dusk resources were gone. The Germans' numerical advantage, combined with their ability to regroup in Lanzerath's village, sustained their pressure. The platoon's wounded, bandaged in foxholes, fought until overrun, their resolve unbroken. The stand's cost, 1 dead, 9 wounded, 12 captured, reflected its intensity. The delay forced the 6th Panzer Army to adjust, giving Allies time to fortify. The Lanzerath Ridge, a minor outpost, became a fulcrum, its defenders' actions rippling through the battle's opening phase. The Germans' failure to break through quickly exposed flaws in their plan. The paratroopers, trained for rapid advances, underestimated the platoon's discipline. The ridge's terrain, combined with the Americans' precision, amplified their impact. Buch's men, though captured, had disrupted the German timetable, forcing Peiper to navigate secondary roads. The platoon's stand, a desperate defense against overwhelming odds, showcased the power of a small unit's resolve. The Elsenborn ridgeline, secured by the delay, became a bulwark against the German advance. The platoon's 16-hour resistance against a battalion 10 times their size became a pivotal moment, its effects felt across the northern shoulder. The Lanzerath Ridge lay silent, its snow stained with the marks of a brutal stand. The Intelligence and Reconnaissance Platoon, 394th Infantry Regiment, 99th Infantry Division, had held off 500 paratroopers for 16 hours. Their capture ended their fight, but their defiance reshaped the Ardennes offensive's opening. Kampfgruppe Peiper's armoured column delayed until midnight on 16 December 1944 reached Lanzerath, hours behind schedule, its tanks bogged down by congested routes. The platoon's foxholes, spaced to cover 800 yards of open ground, had turned a quiet sector into a critical choke point. The Germans, expecting a swift advance, suffered 90 casualties killed or wounded before overwhelming the position. Allied forces alerted to the offensive reinforced the Elsenborn ridgeline, the northern shoulder's linchpin capitalizing on the delay. German commanders, regrouping in Lanzerath's darkened village, faced a stark reality. A single platoon stopped our advance. A Fallschirmjäger major muttered his plan for Rollbahn D shattered. The paratroopers trained for rapid breakthroughs underestimated the Americans' discipline and terrain advantage. The 16-hour delay forced Peiper's tanks to navigate secondary roads, slowing the 6th Panzer Army's northern spearhead. Buch's men, now prisoners, were marched through the snow, their wounds untreated in the freezing night. The sole American killed remained on the ridge, a testament to the battle's cost. The platoon's stand, though a tactical defeat, gave Allied commanders time to strengthen defences along the Elsenborn Ridge, altering the battle's early momentum. The Americans' success stemmed from tactical precision and terrain. The 800-yard firing range allowed a small force to inflict disproportionate damage with M1 rifles and the Browning targeting paratroopers at 200 yards. Buch's leadership, shifting men to counter-probes, rationing ammunition, stretched their resources. The forward observers, cut off from the 371st Field Artillery, fought as infantry after radio failure. The number that matters is 90 German casualties inflicted by 22 men. The Germans, unaware of the platoon's size, hesitated to commit their full strength, fearing a larger force. This miscalculation amplified the delay as the paratroopers regrouped repeatedly, losing critical hours in the process. The broader battle shifted in the Allies' favour. The 6th Panzer Army stalled at Lanzerath, faced mounting resistance as Allied units fortified the northern shoulder. The 99th Infantry Division moved artillery and infantry to bolster the Elsenborn line, leveraging the platoon's delay. The Germans' plan to exploit Rollbahn D faltered, exposing their northern flank to counterattacks. Buch and his men, enduring harsh captivity, remained unaware of their impact, their role buried in the offensive's chaos. The ridge's foxholes, now abandoned, stood as a testament to a small unit's ability to disrupt a larger force, reshaping the battle's opening phase. The platoon's stand highlighted the power of preparation. The ridge's elevation forced the Germans into exposed advances, amplifying the Americans' fire. Buch's orders to fire only on clear targets preserved ammunition until dusk. The forward observers' early artillery strikes, landing shells 800 yards out, disrupted German formations before radio failure. The platoon's discipline, even under mortar barrages, kept the paratroopers at bay until ammunition ran dry. The Germans' numerical superiority, though eventually decisive, came at a steep cost: 90 casualties and a disrupted timetable. The 16-hour resistance gave Allied commanders a window to reinforce, ensuring the northern shoulder held firm. The Lanzerath stand's tactical significance lay in its disruption of German plans. The platoon's use of terrain combined with precise fire turned a reconnaissance mission into a defensive bulwark. The Germans' hesitation, misjudging the platoon's size, allowed Buch's men to maximize their impact. The Elsenborn ridgeline, secured by the delay, became a wall against the 6th Panzer Army. The platoon's sacrifice, 1 dead, 9 wounded, 12 captured, bought time for Allied divisions to entrench. The ridge, a minor outpost, became a fulcrum, its defenders' actions echoing through the battle. The 16-hour stand against overwhelming odds showcased the power of a small unit's resolve in a vast campaign. The Allied response, triggered by the platoon's stand, reshaped the northern front. The 99th Infantry Division's reinforcements, including artillery batteries, entrenched along the Elsenborn Ridge, blunting the German advance. The 6th Panzer Army's northern thrust, reliant on speed, faltered as congested routes slowed Peiper's tanks. The platoon's foxholes, covering 800 yards, had forced the Germans to expend resources and time. Bauck's men, though captured, had altered the battle's trajectory, giving the Allies a critical edge. The Lanzerath Ridge, now in German hands, remained a symbol of defiance, its impact felt across the Ardennes offensive's early days. The Ardennes offensive roared on, but Lanzerath's Ridge had shifted its northern course. The Intelligence and Reconnaissance Platoon's 16-hour stand against the 1st Battalion 9th Fallschirmjäger Regiment delayed the 6th Panzer Army's advance. Kampfgruppe Peiper, reaching Lanzerath near midnight on 16 December 1944, faced congested routes and alerted Allied defences. The platoon's foxholes, covering 800 yards, turned a reconnaissance mission into a choke point, costing the Germans 90 casualties. The Elsenborn ridgeline, critical to the northern shoulder, gained hours for reinforcement, stabilising the Allied front. Bauck's men, now prisoners, endured captivity, unaware of their role in blunting the German spearhead. German commanders pushing toward Lochheimer Graben faced unexpected resistance. The Lanzerath delay crippled our schedule. A panzer officer noted his column stalled. The paratroopers, battered by the platoon's fire, struggled to regroup, their momentum broken. The 6th Panzer Army relied on speed to breach Allied lines, but the 16-hour hold forced a costly recalibration. The Americans' disciplined defense, leveraging the ridge's terrain, exposed flaws in the German plan. The 99th Infantry Division moved artillery and infantry to strengthen the Elsenborn line, capitalizing on the delay. The platoon's stand, a tactical loss, had strategic weight, disrupting the German northern thrust. The platoon's tactical choices were rooted in necessity. The 800-yard firing range allowed precise fire with M1 rifles and the Browning targeting paratroopers at 200 yards. Bauck's leadership, repositioning men, rationing ammunition stretched their resources. The forward observers' early artillery calls, landing shells 800 yards out, sowed chaos before radio failure. The number that matters is 16 hours of resistance against 500. The Germans, misjudging the platoon's size, hesitated to commit their full strength, amplifying the delay. The ridge's elevation forced the paratroopers uphill, exposing them to fire until the Americans' ammunition ran out. The northern shoulder's stability proved decisive. The Germans, unable to exploit Rollbahn D, quickly faced mounting Allied resistance. The 99th Infantry Division's reinforcements entrenched along the Elsenborn Ridge, blunting the 6th Panzer Army's advance. The platoon's sacrifice, 1 dead, 9 wounded, 12 captured, bought time for Allied commanders. Bauck and his men, enduring harsh conditions, remained unaware of their impact. The Lanzerath stand, a small action, demonstrated how terrain and discipline could shift a battle's course, setting the stage for Allied counterattacks. The platoon's 16-hour defense showcased tactical leverage. The ridge's 800-yard field of fire, combined with precise fire, disrupted the German timetable. Bauck's men, though outnumbered, used interlocking fire to maximize their impact. The Germans' hesitation, fearing a larger force, allowed the platoon to hold longer. The Elsenborn ridgeline, secured by the delay, became a bulwark against the German advance. The platoon's stand, though ending in capture, forced the Germans to adjust their strategy, weakening their northern thrust. The foxholes, now silent, marked a moment where 22 men reshaped the battle's opening phase. The Allied response, triggered by the platoon's stand, strengthened the northern front. The 99th Infantry Division's artillery batteries, positioned along the Elsenborn Ridge, repelled German probes. The 6th Panzer Army's northern thrust, reliant on speed, faltered as Peiper's tanks navigated congested routes. The platoon's foxholes, covering 800 yards, had forced the Germans to expend resources and time. Bauck's men, though captured, had given the Allies a critical edge. The Lanzerath Ridge, now in German hands, remained a symbol of defiance, its impact felt across the Ardennes offensive's early days. The stand's broader implications emerged as the battle unfolded. The Germans' failure to break through quickly exposed vulnerabilities in their plan. The platoon's disciplined fire, leveraging terrain, turned a minor outpost into a strategic fulcrum. The Elsenborn ridgeline, fortified by the delay, held firm against subsequent German assaults. Bauck's men, unaware of their role, endured captivity's hardships, their sacrifice unrecognized for years. The 16-hour stand against a battalion 10 times their size became a testament to resilience, its effects rippling through the Battle of the Bulge's northern front. The Lanzerath Ridge, a frozen scar in the Ardennes, stood as a testament to defiance. The Intelligence and Reconnaissance Platoon, 394th Infantry Regiment, 99th Infantry Division, held off 500 paratroopers for 16 hours. Their stand costing the Germans 90 casualties, and critical hours protected the Elsenborn Ridge Line, the northern shoulder's anchor. Kampfgruppe Peiper's delay at Lanzerath until midnight on 16 December 1944 disrupted the 6th Panzer Army's plan, allowing Allied reinforcements to entrench. The platoon's foxholes covering 800 yards turned a minor outpost into a pivotal choke point. Bouck's men, captured and scattered, faced captivity's hardships, unaware of their role in altering the offensive's course. German commanders, reflecting on the northern thrust, acknowledged the setback. Their resistance broke our northern advance, a Fallschirmjäger officer admitted, recalling Lanzerath's ridge. The assumption that green American units would collapse proved false, as the platoon's disciplined fire defied expectations. The 16-hour stand forced the Germans to expend resources and time, weakening their spearhead. The 99th Infantry Division, leveraging the delay, fortified the Elsenborn line with artillery and infantry, ensuring the northern shoulder's stability. The platoon's actions, a tactical defeat, contributed to the strategic failure of the German northern prong, a turning point in the Battle of the Bulge. Decades later, the platoon's stand gained recognition. In 1981, the Intelligence and Reconnaissance Platoon received the Presidential Unit Citation, a rare honor for a unit of 22. Lieutenant Bouck and several men were awarded Distinguished Service Crosses for their leadership and courage. The citation praised their defense of the Elsenborn approach, shielding a vital Allied position. The number that matters is 16 hours of delay against a battalion's strength. The platoon's story, lost in the battle's chaos, emerged as a case study in tactical resilience, showing how a small force could disrupt a larger one's momentum. The Lanzerath stand remains a study in preparation and adaptability. Bouck's use of the ridge's terrain, leveraging an 800-yard firing range, maximized the platoon's impact. Their discipline, rationing ammunition, repositioning under fire, turned a reconnaissance mission into a defensive bulwark. The forward observers, cut off from artillery, fought as infantry, adding their rifles to the defense. The Germans' 90 casualties, inflicted by 22 men, underscored the effectiveness of their tactics. The Battle of the Bulge raged for weeks, but the northern shoulder's stability, owed in part to Lanzerath, helped blunt the German advance. The platoon's legacy, etched in the ridge's foxholes, highlights a truth: a determined stand can reshape a war's course. The historical weight of Lanzerath lies in its demonstration of tactical leverage. The platoon's 16-hour resistance against overwhelming odds showed how terrain and discipline could alter a battle's flow. The Elsenborn ridgeline, secured by the delay, became a wall against the 6th Panzer Army. Bouck's men, through their sacrifice, 1 dead, 9 wounded, 12 captured, gave the Allies a critical edge. The ridge's 800-yard field of fire, combined with precise fire, disrupted the German timetable, forcing a strategic shift. The platoon's story, recognized in 1981, endures as a lesson in resilience, proving that a small unit's actions can echo through history. The stand's significance extends beyond the battlefield. The platoon's ability to hold a battalion at bay showcased the power of small unit tactics. The Germans' failure to break through quickly exposed vulnerabilities in their offensive. The Elsenborn ridgeline, fortified by the delay, repelled subsequent German assaults, ensuring Allied control of the northern front. Bouck's men, unaware of their impact, endured captivity's hardships, their sacrifice unrecognized for decades. The 16-hour stand, a minor action in a vast campaign, became a symbol of defiance, its effects rippling through the Battle of the Bulge's northern front. The Lanzerath Ridge, now a quiet memorial, stands as a lesson in courage and strategy. The platoon's foxholes, covering 800 yards, turned a reconnaissance mission into a pivotal stand. The Germans' 90 casualties, inflicted by a small force, underscored the effectiveness of disciplined fire. The Elsenborn ridgeline, secured by the platoon's delay, held firm, blunting the German offensive. Bouck's leadership, leveraging terrain and limited resources, reshaped the battle's opening. The platoon's story, honoured in 1981, remains a testament to the power of a small unit's resolve, its legacy enduring in the annals of military history.